It's Hard to Believe, the podcast that brings you absolutely true but very hard to believe stories. I'm your host, G Wiz. Now let's get into it.
Virgin births, miracle or meh? Numerous religions tell of a virgin birth. For example, Horus, the Egyptian god of power and healing, was said to have been born from the virgin goddess Isis. The Hindu god Krishna also had a virgin mother, as did Romulus and Remus, the founders of Rome, Dionysus, the god of wine and festivity, and even Plato himself, who is an actual person, was said to have had a virgin for a mother. Feels like I'm leaving out a big one. Anyway, it's hard to believe, but outside of religion, virgin births really do happen. And they happen more often than you would expect. I know what you're thinking. It's no surprise that in cultures where sex before marriage is condemned, that thousands of unwed teenage girls have claimed to be virgins despite all outward signs to the contrary. It's really hard to believe, but 1% of American women claim to be a virgin at the time they give birth. These women were also twice as likely to have signed an abstinence pledge, and they reported that their parents did not discuss sex or birth control with them. So I'm going to let you draw your own conclusions there. And just to be clear, there are no proven cases of a human virgin birth. But there is one case that came remarkably close. In 1993, geneticists at the University of Edinburgh announced the discovery of a 3-year-old boy with no genetic evidence of a father. Despite being a boy, his DNA consisted of 2 X chromosomes instead of the expected XY chromosome pair. Eventually, they concluded that an unfertilized egg had spontaneously divided into an embryo. That actually happens all the time in humans and other mammals. But usually, because the father's half of the required DNA is missing, those eggs will only develop into a benign tumor. But in this particular case, after the egg had already started dividing on its own, a sperm came along just in time with the father's missing DNA. The result was a child that has 2 different DNA signatures depending on where on his body you take the DNA sample from. But what about an actual virgin birth in animals? Well, imagine how stunned the zookeepers in Kujukushima, Japan were when a lone monkey named Momo unexpectedly gave birth despite living isolated in a concrete and steel cage without any known contact with any other gibbons. The zookeepers were not content to simply call it a miracle, so they began a 2-year investigation that uncovered a previously undiscovered tiny hole in the concrete wall at the back of Momo's enclosure. And guess what? On the other side of that wall was a male gibbon. I guess their passion was just too strong for these swingers to let a wall get in the way of their monkey business. Also, I want to say that I have mad respect for that male gibbon. And just recently, visitors at the Columbus Zoo in Ohio arrived in the morning to find an 8-year-old male gorilla named Sully clutching a newborn baby gorilla. An investigation quickly revealed that Sully wasn't a male after all, and the mystery was easily solved. Maybe they should change Sully's name to Sally now. But not all seemingly miraculous births at the zoo are the result of less than stellar zookeeping. In Costa Rica, a lone crocodile inexplicably laid a fertilized egg. Tests later showed that the embryo was 99.9% identical to its mother, which proves there was no father involved. The child was essentially a clone of her mother. This process is called parthenogenesis, which is literally Greek for virgin creation. Until this egg was laid, no one knew that crocodiles could reproduce asexually. And there's a surprising list of animals that we do know about that can spawn on their own. For example, female aphids have been known to asexually produce male offspring. These males are fertile, but they can only produce female offspring. You know, like Henry VIII. Aphids are not alone. Many species of bees, wasps, and ants can reproduce both sexually and asexually. That's great for insects, but what about vertebrates? You know, animals with a backbone like us? It's hard to believe, but more than 80 species of vertebrates have proven that they can spawn a virgin birth. But don't get too excited or worried, I guess, depending on your point of view, because there are no known mammals capable of natural parthenogenesis. Well, It may not be natural, but scientists have been able to force some mammals, like rabbits, to give virgin births in the lab. And yes, it is technically possible for humans to have a virgin birth through in vitro fertilization, but that's cheating. Some species, like the desert grassland whiptail lizard, are all female and therefore can only reproduce through parthenogenesis. They're an entire species of virgins, kind of like the IT department. Most of you won't be very happy to hear this, but some snakes, like poisonous copperheads, are also capable of parthenogenesis. The largest lizard in the world, the Komodo dragon, is also the largest animal we know of that is capable of a virgin birth. And virgin births are not the only seemingly miraculous reproductive feat that animals can pull off. It's hard to believe, but there are many species that can change their sex at will. Clownfish, hawkfish, sea bass, and grouper are just a few of the numerous fish species that can change from female to male. Here's how it works. All schools of grouper consist of many females led by one larger male. When that male dies, the largest female will transform into a male and continue the school. And self-sex change isn't just limited to fish. Scientists have observed many species of frogs that can and do spontaneously change their sex. At first, this was thought to be the result of man-made pollutants in the environment. But recent studies in the wild have shown that this behavior is quite natural, at least in green frogs, and on RuPaul's Drag Race. Did you know that in many reptile species, the temperature the egg is incubated at will determine the sex of the hatchling? For sea turtles, this adaptation may be the very thing that causes their extinction. As sea level and surface temperatures are rising, in some areas, more than 99% of new turtle hatchlings are now female. Sometimes the temperature will fluctuate during egg incubation. This can result in non-binary offspring. The resulting reptiles will be genetically male, but will act and reproduce like females, and they're welcome to use any bathroom they like. It's hard to believe, but virgin births, spontaneous sex changes, and non-binary genders are all perfectly natural biological adaptations.
You can find links and more information about this topic and our complete library at our website, hardtobelieve.blog. Thank you for listening. This has been Hard to Believe. I'm your host, G Wiz, asking you to please like and subscribe for exclusive content.